When it comes to fighting city crime in style, there is one superhero that knows how to do it right. A dark, menacing, tough superhero with daddy issues and a mascara obsession. Obviously, I'm talking about the Batman. The cool thing about Batman is that he loves electronics and he loves vehicles. He's like an engineer, martial artist, bird enthusiast, all in one. However, when Batman is shown on the big screen, there's one thing that I don't particularly like very much, and that's the fact that everyone focuses on the Batmobile and they don't give the Batcycle the love and attention it deserves. So that's exactly what we're gonna do in this video. We're gonna give the Bat motorcycles some tender love and care. Let's take a trip down Gotham City. How many Batcycles were there? What brands does Batman like the most? What are the gadgets hidden within these motorcycles? Does Batman wave when he sees other riders? What motorcycle is in the most recent Batman movie? All that and more on this episode of Gastro. So who is Batman? Batman is arguably the most popular superhero in the DC universe. He was created by a fellow named Robert Kane all the way back in 1939. Batman is often shown as someone whose superpower is that he's rich. He lives in a bat cave, abducts little boys, wears a cape. He has a really weird raspy voice because he's perpetually suffering from a case of COVID-19 because he lives in a bat cave. Batman has all sorts of vehicles, including the not so cool overrated Bat grocery getter and the ultra cool underrated Batmobile 3000, aka the Batcycle. So without further ado, allow me to introduce you to the very first Bat motorcycle. This bike made its debut in the 1960s. This was back when Batman was in a good mood all the time and fought crime in spandex. This original Batcycle is probably the most practical of the bunch. Adam West wrote a lightly customized cruiser. It had a black paint job with pinkish highlights and a sidecar for your boy Wonder. It had a custom Bat looking windscreen. Oh, and it was a Harley-Davidson Electra Glide. Fun fact, this 1965 model was the last to be fitted with a panhead engine and the first to have an electric start. Kind of special. Back then, you could option these babies to be shifted with the hands and clutched with the foot. And in the 60s TV show, Batman could control everything on the Batmobile from the Batcycle, which meant that the Batcycle was superior. This bike was foundational in setting an example for the future of Bat bobs. It exemplified the great convenience of having a Bat motorcycle. The Batmobile is a massive, noisy, unreliable piece of junk. So if Batman needed a vehicle that was more nimble and more subtle, he was gonna need more Bat motorcycles. So a year after the release of the first Batcycle, Batman got a little bit of an upgrade. Got a brand new Batcycle. This bike was a sight to behold. Two builders working at Customotive, Dan Dembski and Corky Corks, are responsible for this concoction. Dan had a vision and a blueprint. Corky Corks was a legendary car builder. He built cars for Frank Sinatra, Elton John, Dean Martin, and together Dan and Corky built one of the most interesting Batcycles ever. This bike had some brand spanking new aerodynamics, a black and white paint job with the red Batman logo, a sidecar, again, for Robin. But this sidecar wasn't just any regular sidecar. It had two very interesting quirks. For one thing, it had no wind protection whatsoever. So the whole time, Robin was just getting assaulted by the wind. The second quirk is that this sidecar was also a go-kart. With the press of a button, Batman could launch Robin into oncoming traffic. So this bike was a little faster, it had a little bit more gadgets, it looked a little crazier. And if you squinted really, really hard, it kinda sorta looked like a bat, sort of. But it wasn't a bat. It was a Yamaha Catalina. I like the name Catalina. It reminds me of South America. Catalina. The Catalina, however, wasn't from South America. It was Japanese. This 250 Speed McQueen won the championship back in 1964 with its top speed of 100 miles per hour, which, you know, back then those were good numbers. And now, this thing was putting Gotham's most juvenile delinquents in the penitentiary. Can you believe that? Now, you may be thinking to yourself, are these all the Batmobiles from the 60s? Surely there can't be any more Batmobiles. There's one more, technically. Batgirl also had a motorcycle. This thing had a bow and a frickin' tutu. Designed again by the folks at Customotive, this motorcycle was a 180cc two-stroke parallel twin, again, from Yamaha, a bike that proved that 180 cc's could actually be kind of sporty. The bike was known for being really reliable and virtually indestructible, so it makes a pretty good Batmobile. Now, as much as I love the colorful and wacky Bat vehicles, this would unfortunately be the end of joyous Bat people. From this point on, it would be nothing but grittiness, darkness, and depression. From 1967 to 1997, we didn't get a single Batcycle. For 30 whole years, not a single one. Sure, we got a little bit of action in Batman Forever where Robin rides a Northern Commando, but nothing else. By the late 90s, however, things started to look up again. We had a new Batman and a whole new aesthetic. The theme was fear and everything was dark. We had a new Bruce Wayne, played by George Clooney. And best of all, we had a new Batcycle. You know what they say, if you love something, set it free. And if it comes back, it's a lean, mean, custom machine. The Redbird was a totally custom cruiser. And before you say, hey, wait, hold up, this is not Batman's vehicle, this is Robin's vehicle. No, check the registration, check the insurance. This thing is actually owned by Batman, but Robin gets to ride it. Yeah, that's right. Robin's not sitting in sidecars anymore getting whiplash from the wind. He's got his M license now and he's rolling in style. The Redbird was designed by the company TFX. It had everything you wanted in a cruiser. The low seat height, the sweet engine sound, the fluorescent paint job, the massive chrome pipes that scrape the ground when you lean too hard. It also had everything you didn't want in a cruiser. The questionable body fairing, the complicated LCD display, the wheelbase that was over 3 meters long. But like, what was this bike really? What was beneath all the makeup? Was it another Harley? Was it an Indian? A Kawasaki? No. It was built from a 600cc Honda prototype with 95 horsepower. It was arguably the most rad motorcycle in any Batman movie ever. But was it really? Because in that same movie, there was another motorcycle that was also freaking insane, the Batblade. So the Batblade was ridden by Batgirl. Believe it or not, this motorcycle was built from the same Honda as the Redbird, but it looked entirely different. It was inspired by a drag bike. You know, the ones that have 1500 horsepower and go from 0 to 60 in like a second. This thing also had a massive wheelbase, but it was equipped with car tires at the rear, custom Batman front scoop, and wings protruding from the sides. This movie made one thing really clear. Batcycles were back, and they were just as creative as ever. In fact, they were about to get even crazier than this. 2008 was the release of The Dark Knight featuring Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. This was actually the highest grossing film of that year. I don't know what drugs the studios were doing, but they created this thing called the Batpod, which is like, I don't even think we can call this thing a motorcycle. It will have you shaking in your riding boots. If I could describe it in 3 words, would be ammunition, terror, and witchcraft. The motorcycle, if you even want to call it a motorcycle, would emerge from the Batmobile, as if the Batmobile had given birth to a newborn baby. But it wasn't a cute little Grom. It was a full-fledged killer. The tires in the back of this thing were the thickest of the thickest. It was armed with dual front-mounted cannons, machine guns, grappling hooks, bulletproof armor. Plus, it could do this. What the hell is that? The Batpod was created from the ground up, designed by Nathan Crowley, built by special effects supervisor Chris Corbold. It had 31-inch Poiser racing tires from the drag strip, a chassis made of carbon fiber, Kevlar, and steel. This thing was real, and it actually had to be written by someone. And apparently the laser targeting systems were real. We needed an army when you have Warner Brothers creating weapons of mass destruction. If you take a look at this bike, you might ask yourself, where the hell's the engine? But I think a better question might be, where the hell are the engines? Because there's two, one in the hub of each wheel. It had something called independent wheel drive, and the engines were from a Honda 750. Which Honda 750? I'm not sure, but a Honda 750. And to add to all the Batpod chaos, this thing didn't even have seats or normal handlebars. You had to lay down on the bike, on your belly. You know, you had to get all sexy. Probably because it looked freaking cool. Because like the Bat cape would go all crazy and shit. It made Batman look like he could actually fly. And now we've come to the most recent Batman, the one played by the goth bad boy Robert Pattinson. If you haven't seen Batman, the message of the movie is that everyone should make motorcycles their daily form of transportation. The Batman features not one, not two, but 3 motorcycles. Technically, only one of these is the Batcycle. But I think we should talk about the other 2 because they're freaking interesting. The first bike we'll explore is the Catcycle. This is Catwoman's daily ride. It's this blacked out street fighter. The bike's design was inspired by Cherry's company highway Street Fighter. Do you see the resemblance? It was powered by a really popular air-cooled twin-cylinder boxer engine. You ever heard it? It's the BMW R90. Bruce Wayne's main vehicle when he's not in bat form is a beat-up cafe racer. The bike is called the Drifter. There's been no mention of the bike used for this build, but a lot of people agree that it shares an uncanny resemblance to a CB750. This bike is constantly turned into a cafe racer. It's the Inline 4 from Honda, the universal Japanese motorcycle, the first motorcycle to be dubbed a superbike. Bruce Wayne uses this motorcycle to sneak around and do detective work. And by detective work, that means spying on the girl he likes. When Batman throws on his cape and applies his mascara, he's got a whole new ride. The producers of the movie wanted something that looked raw, menacing, exposed, brutal. They wanted a bike hand-built by Bruce Wayne in his garage. So if you're wondering why Batman is so moody all the time, it's because he spent the last 3 hours on a scavenger hunt for a missing bolt. If you don't keep your nuts and bolts in one place, you might become a angry, lonely Batman. The Batcycle kind of looked like Batman's version of an MV Agusta Super Veloce. Did I say that right? It looked like a classic racer build with hints of I'm really into bat stuff. Compared to the other Batcycles, this one was more restrained, basic, exposed. Yet, no one can guess what the heck this bike is. That means that the studio did a really good job making this bike look unique. But there are some theories as to what this motorcycle really is. Our friends at Ride Apart thinks the bike's front forks resemble that of a Fat Bob, and maybe that part was taken from that motorcycle. Some believe it's another BMW R9T, but even more modified. Some have even theorized that it's an electric bike, maybe even a Zero SR. Maybe there's a big, massive battery under the frame. But for now, this build, for the most part, remains a mystery. If you have any guesses of what this bike might actually be, let me know in the comments. And until then, thank you for watching.